Hi friends, welcome back to Deep Dive with Nema. So this will be the second season, first episode, where we'll be talking about heartbreak, how to get over heartbreak, how to get through it, just the whole process, as well as our past experiences with heartbreak. We're just going to get up close and personal. So join us, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I am so happy you're here. I have a friend of mine called Gervaz. I will let him introduce himself.
I'm Gervaz, a friend of Nema's.
Okay,
Yes.
So we're going to go deep into heartbreak and just discuss our experiences with heartbreak, how we got through it, and all that. So let's just dive in there.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. So when was your last heartbreak?
This might be a bit of a shocker, but never technically.
Wow.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we got the wrong guest. That will be all.
Thank you
so
very
much
much
for
for
watching. This was lovely. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. We're done. How have you never gotten your heart broken? How?
I mean, maybe let me ask, what do you mean by heartbreak exactly?
Heartbreak would be the end of, it could be, in this case, we're focusing on relationships. The end of a relationship. It could be heartbreak within a relationship. It could be heartbreak through a relationship. Just something that causes your heart to just sink, to ache, and just to feel like you literally have a knife through your chest.
Okay, and I have never been through any of those scenarios.
Yet again, he proves us that this is the end of the show.
Right up until the taping of this interview, I have not really been in a relationship. Henceforth, I have not really had my heart broken. Like, I'm a very cautious person.
Okay.
And I also don't believe in what I call half measures. Like, there's some things, and I think we know, there's some things that I don't think are worth trying if you don't think if you already know on some level they're not going to work out.
Okay.
There's some things where I understand that people, like, you know, they find each other, they find each other attractive, they get into relationships, but there's some things that are just delayed heartbreaks. Like, you know, and I've seen it with people. I've told them, like, that's just, you know, on some level, there's this thing where you're just like, it's going to be a big issue.
Yeah.
But you don't want to think about it right now, because right now you're in the moment where things are sort of great and you sort of like certain aspects of relationship work out.
Yeah.
But it's just a delayed heartbreak. So it could be, there's so many different versions of it. There are people who met people who are kind of still stuck up on someone else.
Yeah.
There are people for whom, like, they meet and maybe they believe in different things, let's say in terms of their faith. And when it gets to a point where they want to get serious enough to get married, then it's just like, yo, are you willing to come over to my side? And just like, well, no, and then they break up, heartbreak. There's lots of different versions of this, but there's a lot of unnecessary pain that we put ourselves through.
Yeah.
And I understand it's not like when you're outside and you're being logical, it seems like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. But I get that people just feel a certain way about other people. And at that moment, they don't want to really think about some of the difficult things and they proceed, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So that might have, there are a lot of situations which I could have gotten into relationships and I already know.
Yeah.
Like, I know the person I am and I know what I'm about, and I'll give the other person a chance to, like, hey, who are you? What are you about? And I can see the difference. Like, there's some things you can sort of like work out and reconcile. I'm not looking for like some perfect person.
Yeah.
But there are things that you know that are intrinsic enough that one, I wouldn't want that person to change for me, because they're like, hey, if that's what you believe in and how you do things, don't change on my account. If you actually believe in choosing a different path for yourself, then yes. But if you don't, there is nothing really, like, you shouldn't. Again, if you do it for me, once we get over that initial bit where you were sort of like just infatuated with each other, whatever it is, and you have to fall back on certain practical realities of like, okay, can I actually work? Can this actually work? Then there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work out. Of course, there's people who get their heart broken because their partner maybe cheated on them or whatever it is. There's other versions of this where you can't foresee, and even in some of those cases there's some things you kind of can, but there's sometimes you get blindsided, and that's just it. You can see you're on a path of emotionally, not just yourself and the other person. There are people who I'll meet, they'll like me, they will tell me they like me, and I'll be like, hey, that's great, but you know I'm about this, and this is what, like, we can talk, we can be friends and it's all great. I'll even tell them like, hey, we don't have to be friends even, because sometimes being friends is also just emotionally frustrating one person in that equation, or I'll emotionally frustrate myself. I like to feel like I'm kind of at a place where I can like someone and still be their friend, and it wouldn't bother me, because I'll just be like, oh, you'll just fall into this other category of someone I can't date. But there are other people, I'll just tell them like, hey, if you don't want to be emotionally frustrated, I will tell you right now that this is not going to go anywhere.
That's what it takes to be self-aware. Compartmentalize, guys.
Which is
compartmentalize. Which is hard. When you're talking about it right now, I know it seems simple, but when you're in the moment, you're like, oh, is it simple for you?
It has become simpler. Like, these things take time, and with Ed, it's like people who work out. Once you meet them deep in their workout, a year and a half in, it's a routine to them, and it's easy, but it isn't. There was a point in which it wasn't the natural reaction, where it's just like, I have to delete this number from my phone or whatever. If I text this person, it's not like it's not gonna go anywhere good. Where we both know that it's just gonna, either we both like each other, or just even if they don't like me, just casually being around them is still frustrating for me. So I won't do it. But over time, I just got to a point where just like, oh well, there's a person who we get along. We get the humor, or whatever. We click. If we had dated, it may have been great, but I know that apart from all those other things, values ultimately are what determine if people stay together or not, because values are very intrinsic, and they last longer than the initial feelings, that they're things that people have been formed into by 20-25 years of their life and how their upbringing. They might feel about a person a certain way for a time, but once that passes, you fall back into all that history that made you that person. And it's very hard to run away from that and just be like, well, I don't care about these things anymore. I'm going to be this other person for the sake of this situation. You sort of violate yourself. Where at some point you'll come back and be like, okay, I'm trying, but I can't just stop being this person and be another person for this one instance. So.
But what I want to know, I'm really trying to get a moment whereby it doesn't have to be in a relationship. Let's forget relationships. Have you ever liked someone and ended up getting just a little stab in your heart, just a little, kidogo tu?
No, I mean, I definitely felt bad when just like you like someone and they don't like you back. Like that is
what I'm trying to get.
Absolutely, and just like, and again, maybe just because of how I process it, where I'm just like, hey, I wouldn't want it any other way. Like, I would want someone to feel the way I felt, or get to a place where they do feel the way I felt about them. Rather than have someone just sort of, like, well, I'm just here because you happen to be the person that's close by and you're nice to me or whatever it is.
And you end up being a placeholder.
Which is also kind of dangerous if you happen to be what they call some sort of a nice guy. There are people who just like the idea of your niceness. But you're not what they like. But you represent what people would call like a safe option. So they're like, okay, so I'll be here because I'm not gonna get my heart broken. But at my expense. So
as someone who, let's say you've never gotten your heart broken, how do you envision heartbreak to be like? Or do you feel like it's a bit exaggerated from people who got their heart broken? What do you think of heartbreak from your perspective?
I think it's terrible. I think that I think one of the very, and maybe this is even as I again, like I said, like it's easy to say some things when you're in this space where you're not in the situation. But I've told people like, hey, if you ever see, like my friends who are close to me, like if you ever see me like, going down a certain path, because I might meet someone for whom I'll be like, I know this is a bad idea, but forget all that, and I'm gonna do this. And I'll tell my friends like, hey, if you ever see me doing that, please try and stop me. I might not have it within myself to stop myself, but same way with heartbreak, when you feel that bad, even if the information registers in your brain like, oh, maybe it had to end or they did a terrible thing, it doesn't stop you from feeling terrible. It's a bit like grief. You sort of have to work through the process to get to that better place. It will suck, and it kind of has to suck. And then slowly over time, but then it's a whole process getting past that place where you can sort of then come back to some semblance of normal. But yeah, I know, just like a lot of other things, that they will be, no matter what the cause is, you will feel absolutely terrible, and it will be a bit of a of a journey coming out. There are people who I know who it has just taken them years of just sort of getting past the trauma, or it might be like coming to trust people again, depending on the way in which it happened. And it really for a lot of people, it just forms a perception around relationships or the opposite sex, whatever it is, the person they're dating. It will sort of translate into a lot of other things in how they conduct themselves in other relationships, which is dangerous if you don't learn the right lessons from some things, where it's just like, okay, objectively, was something a bad idea? Was some people blame themselves for some things where they shouldn't? Yeah. Sort of trying to come out of it in the right headspace is very, very difficult, and it takes a lot of time. But I think you have to try and maintain some kind of objectivity throughout that relationship. Because the moment you like someone, you immediately begin to lose objectivity. Like, just from the moment you just start to go away. So to any extent that you can, hang on to a bit of it. It helps you all the way through. Actually, a friend of mine, she posted this thing today on her Instagram. Yeah. And it said, like, oh, find someone who can like bring you down when your emotions like go out of check, or someone who can be calm for you when you're like the world is getting to you or whatever. And I'm like, this is great. So at first I made a joke like, oh, maybe we should all just date our therapist, because that's the person, like the qualities that they mentioned fit into a person who would be a therapist. But I said also, at some point you have to have your own internal mechanism for dealing with your mental health and emotional control, or finding that, rather than having them connected to a person, because one day that person might not be able to be that for you, because they're having their own issues or whatever, or just the general inadequacy of human beings, and you will need to find a way to keep yourself in check.
This is the logical way to get through it. I will tell you the logical way.
Yes.
To get through it.
Eat your feelings.
Please, yes, if you need to. And of course, the first few days, let's say the first day, you'll be in denial. Like, no, don't call me back. They will do this. Then you're just expecting a call. Then after a certain time, you're like, oh, wait, this and this has happened. Wait a minute. Then it sinks in. I feel like for women, it happens faster than men. I might be being sexist right now, but I was about to ask you if you agree. We are not sexist here, I promise. Okay, so I feel like women feel it more than men. I feel like we feel it faster than men do. It hits us faster than men do. So when it hits you, it takes a long time to reach acceptance. You'll find you're still reaching out to this person. You're reaching out while you're crying and you're stress eating. You're like, is this really happening? But of course, during that, you also have to give yourself grace. This is a lot of emotions for you. Allow yourself to cry. Allow yourself to stress eat. But also set a period of time for that. This is as you head towards the stage Gervaz was talking about.
Tell me about your heartbreak experience. Welcome to the Gervaz and I podcast.
I'm happy to be a guest on this podcast. What about it? You have to tell me, what about my heartbreak experience?
So these are some of the things that maybe I think ultimately would sort of why heartbreaks are different. But what in particular was the splitting factor, if I may ask?
The splitting factor for heartbreak, or no?
Did you end it or did they end it?
Wow. When I said deep dive, he took it literal. He went in for the kill. Did I end it or did they end it? They ended it, actually. Okay. Yeah, so, actually, I feel like through heartbreak, they deal with it differently if you ended it and if you're the one that got broken up with. It hits you harder if you're the one that got broken up with, I think, and the one that dumped doesn't really feel it as much. You're inside it, it's so hard to end it. Like, you think about ending it so many times, but you do not have the courage to end it. So the moment someone else ends it, you're like, it's a sense of, oh my God, I am so sad that this is happening.
But I'm also relieved.
Relief comes after a few months. After a few months, then relief hits you, like, ooh, but did I really see a future with this person? Like, how would our life have been together?
Like, you can enrich your life as an individual. because there are people, once they lose that person, they have little to nothing.
Yeah.
Like there's not much else there. You know of people who they get into a relationship and they just erase their friendships.
Yeah, they lose themselves and their individuality.
And when you lose that person in that state, the loss feels much more like intense because there's just not much else there.
Yeah.
So like learning to live a full life with and without, because you don't, for me, I also embrace the fact that I don't have a guarantee of that person. Like I don't know if I'll find them. I don't know if I'll find them tomorrow. I don't know if I'll find them 2 years from now. But that means, one, I can't be in a state of waiting.
Yeah.
I need, like, my life continues regardless, and I need to be able to live a full, fulfilling life regardless of that.
Burning question.
Yes.
Continue, please. Don't
but yes, you can enrich your life as much as possible so you have rich relationships that even give you some sort of perspective. I think it will help, even if it doesn't make it feel better, but having people to go to be alongside you while you go through a difficult time definitely counts for something.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is how to be single. That's the end of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. All right. Yes. So my question was going to be, you have been single for how many years? Your 31. Whole life? Pardon? How old are you?
I'm 31. I've always been
single.
Yes.
And how, I know we've talked about how exactly to be single and how to be fulfilled single. Just expound on that from your perspective and how you feel you don't need the need for, maybe you have the need for, but just companionship or just going through life solo.
I think you need to realize the extent of what your life is. So even if you were in a relationship, there are people for whom their life is work.
Yeah.
Like they go to work and they do like they work and they try and get a promotion and they make that money, they'll go and party, but on the weekends, but everything is about that work. There are people who really get into their relationships. Yeah. Like they're always with their partner and they go to places with them, and these are all not necessarily bad things. Yeah. But balance is very important. Yeah. It's like there's something that has to serve, like, hey, this is work, it serves a purpose for giving me an income. Yeah. Maybe I am passionate about it in A, B, and other ways. Yeah. And it gives me meaning in a certain way, but it is not the entirety of my life. Yeah. I have these relationships, and these relationships might be with family, with friends, they may be romantic relationships, and they're great. Yeah. But they are also, like, you still exist as an individual, and this is partially into introspection. You also taking time to know yourself and know your capabilities. If there are things that you like and that you enjoy, do you go out and do those things? Do you go out and do things that give you pleasure and make you feel like, okay, I'm not just following a crowd or to a place or whatever. This is me and this is what I'm about. Yeah. Part of that comes from trying a lot of different things, which is something I tell people to do a lot of, just like, try painting. You might not have to be like some major painter who sells his painting, but just be like, hey, this is something that I like and I enjoy. I like how it feels. I'm not trying to make it into a thing. It's just I'm deriving pleasure from doing it, and it's good. It might be good for me. Yeah. But taking time to find all the ways in which your life can be enriched by experiences, by other relationships. Like, you have friends that having lots of different friends for me has been very, like, you have friends that are all about different things. They all like different things. They all know different things. They bring things into your life that you otherwise you would not experience, or you wouldn't know. So I have friends. There's a friend of mine. She's like, I don't drink, but she likes wine, and she's like, into those details and stuff. And I could see a window into that world. I have friends from different countries, so they have all these cultural experiences. There's just such a large spectrum of life that you can take part in and enjoy if you take the time to do it. Yeah. So there are people who, whether or not you're in a relationship, they don't do that altogether. Where they're sort of getting by, and not because, like, and this is not, sometimes people think that you need maybe money or something to do it, but it might not necessarily even be an issue of your ability to travel or whatever it is. But there's small things you can do that don't cost a lot. Yeah. Especially with your friends, and just like you can have great experiences. And I think that it makes your life feel like there's more to it than just one thing. Yeah. That if you lost your relationship, if you lost your job, if you lost, like, whatever element that got subtracted in some way from that life in a way that was out of your control, what's left is still, like, you still have a it's still a good life.
Yeah.
And there are things, you have more things to take you out of that space of loss and grief, and because it could become a lot. There are people whose life largely becomes about that.
Yeah.
And it becomes unfortunate. There's an example of someone we knew who his whole identity also was in him being a provider for his family. He was a man, he had a wife, he had his kids, and then he lost his job, and it just crushed him, and he started binge drinking. It was just terrible because he had placed his identity and his value in a sense in that place, and when he lost it, he felt like I'm nothing now because I don't have this one thing that I had used to define the entirety of my life. So yeah, I think it's sort of finding that ways like how can I live a fuller life, and introspecting and finding out things that you are capable of or that you might be capable of exploring. Like you don't. There's a I've told you about a friend of mine who passed recently, and I was going through like her memorial video, and she had gone to so many places and done so many things and just had all these great experiences that she's 5 years older than me, but she lived like it looked like a really full and happy life. She may have been single and she wasn't married or anything, and I know that she was single, I think, but when she came to Tanzania she wasn't from here, but she lived a very full life. Like friends told us, oh, you had like the video of her memorial looked so great, and I said like she gave us so much to work with. Like there was so much material of her doing all these wonderful things. I was just like, okay, so you can live even if your life had to end, unfortunately, abruptly at some point. What would you feel like you've done? Like you go out and live that full life because you don't know when it will end or it will go away. And if you find someone and you can have a full life together, that would be amazing. And because it's not really within your control, if it doesn't happen,
then it doesn't.
It doesn't, and you would still live a great life.
Yeah, and also a full life doesn't mean you need to have money in order to have a full life. You could just indulge in the little things. Yeah.
And there are so many little things.
There's so many little things
that, like, you could go to the beach early in the morning and it's like a free beach and it's just, you can sit
watch
there
the
and
sunrise.
It's a beautiful thing, and it's just like, it's peaceful. You can sometimes even, it's about taking time to have the pleasure of something, not so much spending the money. Just have you ever taken the time to stop and, I don't know, really clean your feet or whatever? There's things that feel nice, but you don't do that.
Or just to feel the sun by the beach, like actually feeling the sun.
Actually feeling it, not just like, whipping out your phone and filming it and all these things. So I think that just really helps even you out as a person. And even out how you consume experiences and things that happen to you, especially things that you don't have control over.
All right, that's a good way to end part 1 of Heartbreak. All right, so this is season 2, episode 1, part 1 of Heartbreak. There will be a cooler title for this. Bear with me, but for now we'll go with Heartbreak Hotel from a perspective of someone who has never gotten their heart broken. I'm so happy you watched. If you stuck till the end, please leave a comment and I will see you in the next episode.